Caleb Froedge, and you're listening to Verse by Verse. The verse for today is Psalm 85 and verse 10. This verse is one of the most beautiful descriptions of a harmonious environment in which God is immensely blessing. Verses 9 and 10 of Psalm 85 help to describe this setting where individuals are receiving favor from God in a period of restoration and building up. Notice what Psalm 85 and verses 9 and 10 say. Surely his salvation is near to those who fear him, that glory may dwell in our land. Mercy and truth have met together, righteousness and peace have kissed. The context of this verse in relationship to the entire 85th chapter details a restored environment of peace and righteousness that has not always been found. At the beginning of the chapter, the psalmist speaks of God restoring favor and helping his people to be brought back from captivity and prevalent sin, which was producing generational consequences. The psalmist recognized that God was bringing his people to a revived state and place of rejoicing. Psalm 85 is describing a changed dwelling place, a place where truth is springing up out of the earth and righteousness is looking down from heaven, which is said in verse 11. There's also a description of God's wonderful blessings because now they are following God. In verses 12 through 13, it says, Yes, the Lord will give what is good, and our land will yield its increase. Righteousness will go before him, referring to God, and shall make his footsteps our pathway. When we follow God and the pathway that he has set forth, it leads us to an environment described in verse 10, our verse for today. A place where mercy and truth have met together and where righteousness and peace have kissed. Peace is something that we all yearn for in today's society, and yet it is war and conflict that engulfs the news among nations and local cities. So what is lacking? Why are national cities and provinces and nations in general lacking peace, love, and unity? Is it possible to have peace and harmony without first being in harmony with God? God's way of life is what promotes peace and unity. Mercy and peace are intimately connected to truth and righteousness. Where there is mercy, there is truth to be found. Where there is peace, there is righteousness abounding. So what is truth and righteousness? Psalm 119 in verse 172 says, My tongue shall speak of your word, for all your commandments are righteousness. Righteousness is not some ambiguous idea of being right or good. God's definition of righteousness is very specific. Simply put, God's righteousness is defined by obedience to his laws. When God's law is obeyed, it does not create some sort of rigid, unloving environment. But on the contrary, when God's law is obeyed, it produces a loving environment where peace and mercy have kissed truth and righteousness. 2 John 1 and verse 6 says, This is love, that we walk according to his commandments. This is the commandment that you have heard from the beginning. You should walk in it. The sixth commandment, for example, tells us that we should not murder. And when the sixth commandment is obeyed, the door is open for peace and love because there's not hate and murder. The seventh commandment says you shall not commit adultery. When the seventh commandment is obeyed, there's the opportunity for trusting and loving relationships because there is not unfaithful, covetous actions abounding. These are examples of righteousness leading to a wonderful, loving environment. Wouldn't it be nice to dwell in cities where the crime rate is 0 and all the families of the land are in harmony? What type of dwelling place would it be like if an entire city upheld God's laws and obeyed the 10 Commandments? It would be an environment that is full of love. It would be a place where mercy and truth have met and where righteousness and peace have kissed.
Verse by Verse is a Life, Hope, and Truth podcast. Check out the show notes to find more free content like videos, articles, and booklets in our Learning Center.